Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hello, Gene and LeUyen. I'm so excited to see you both.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Mimi.
I
I
know.
really
Always.
appreciate you dressing up for it too with your t-shirt. That's so cool.
Yes.
I
My
know.
Lunar New Year shirt. So my student gets me a different Lunar New Year shirt every year. This one was the year of the tiger, and it happened to be the tiger
Oh,
doing the lion, which was kind of cute.
so funny.
And
Yeah.
then
Aw.
there's like a different one every year with the zodiac. And so we'll see with the dragon next year what comes
Yeah.
out. It should be a pretty cool shirt. But yes, I thought I would be festive with
Yeah,
my
that's
Aw.
with my
awesome.
lion dancing. Well, I'm going to jump right in and just say, wow, Lunar New Year love story. Number one, I am like so privileged and honored to have a teeny tiny part in this amazing project and to have this connection to it. So thank you for involving me. But I don't know that I've seen the final because I haven't got to hold it yet. But I know that Win and I went back and forth with that last
Yeah.
draft, and it's just beautiful. The story is beautiful. The art is beautiful. So just congratulations, first of all, for this incredible project.
Oh, thank you. It's
Thank
exciting,
you.
isn't it? I can't believe you don't have a copy of the book. How come we didn't send it to her?
I don't know.
I
We should
know.
yeah, we should ask. We'll ask for a second to send you a copy. Yeah,
That would be
Yeah,
amazing.
at
That would be
least.
amazing. That
My
would be
we'll
amazing.
ask
goodness.
them to send you a copy for
Yeah,
sure.
that would be amazing. So I was like, because I've been
Yeah.
watching you guys on social flip through it, and I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous, but I'm so excited. And I've already sent it to all the students who hopefully they're they'll see their little faces in there to pre-order. So I really am excited to talk to you both about this project because one is I feel like again part of the process, which has been incredible, but of course Lunar New Year is a big part of my life. Just off air, Gene and I were kind of talking about, we're leading up to that time of year again, and I was really curious, not just how this project came about, but kind of your memories growing up. Like it's such a nostalgic story, where we've got young love, I've got lion dancing, which is a part of my daily life, and just like kind of that teenage dynamic, the cultural dynamic between teenagers, Asian Americans with their parents, there's family, there's so many different things going on in this. And I want to start off with Lunar New Year, of course, being the title of the book, and just being that we are approaching Lunar New Year. Like what was that like for each of you growing up? Like did you have
Mhm.
specific traditions? What were your memories, kind of growing up with Lunar New Year in your life? So whoever wants to jump in first.
Jane, you can go first.
I mean, as a kid, I think the part of Lunar New Year I was most interested in was the red envelopes, the hongbao, because
And
like
why not?
my parents were pretty stingy on allowance, so
There you go.
the Lunar New Year was like the big haul. That's when you actually
Yes.
like get most of your cash for the year,
100%.
uh,
100%.
and I don't know how it is for Vietnamese people, but Chinese people have a very interesting relationship with money, right? Like there's a lot of symbolism around money, and
Yeah.
there's like a lot of like emotions attached to money. It's not always a healthy relationship, but it's just like there's a lot there.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
beyond the red envelope, it was also food. Like there's just tons of food. It's like food and money. Like how awesome is that tradition? It's all food and money.
It is. It is. Was Lunar New Year your favorite holiday, or was it still like Christmas as an
I don't know if
American
it was my
growing up?
favorite. It was
Yeah,
definitely up there though.
it
It was
was up
definitely up
there.
there. It was like yeah. And we went to San Francisco a few times for
Hmm.
Lunar New Year. We did go see the parade. And then when I was really little, I remember firecrackers being really loud. I remember lion dancers. I remember lots of
Hmm.
like color and noise,
Yeah.
good food, and these envelopes of money. That was what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when? How about you?
We had it. I mean, for the Vietnamese, it's Tet, right? And that's the biggest
Tet.
holiday,
Yes.
if not the only holiday, pretty much of the year. And it's not like my parents explained Tet to us at all growing up, which is
Mhm.
it's kind of a weird dysfunction. I think being immigrants at that time, like leaving Vietnam, coming here, a lot of the culture wasn't explained; it was just assumed. So I don't think my parents, for instance, ever sat me down the way maybe like a Western family would sit down and explain, Jesus was born on Christmas and that's why we celebrate. Like there was no explanation of what Tet was or anything. It was just you were respectful. And during that entire month, there was a shrine that was built in our kitchen only, right? Like normally it's just a shrine on the back wall of the house with my grandparents on it and little candles. But for that month, and it was a whole month, there would be a huge space on the dining room table and you put their pictures up there and it would be a ton of food that you weren't allowed to touch, which was a bummer because like we were always hungry and we never got that quality of food. And it would be this gorgeous array of sort of like beautiful tropical fruits and pineapples and things that we just didn't normally get. And we couldn't touch any of it. But you could see like the bowl was meant to be for the ancestors and it was meant to be food to give to the ancestors. But my little brother and I just had no idea that that's what it was for. So we would, go and steal some and pick them off the little stems. And by the end of the month, you would see these little holes in the food of where my little brother and I were picking all the food out. And then of course all the incense and for us it was especially the rice cakes, like the cakes that only came at that time of year, and my mother would cut them up and fry them, and man, we just loved them so much. Like that was my idea of what Tet was. It was about food, it was about talking about ancestors. And then on the year that I turned 12, I got to do the blessings because that was my animal year, my spirit year. And I remember my mother not quite explaining to me what I was supposed to do, but she said, take the incense and go from room to room and you're supposed to bless each room of the house. And it's all these like little memories where, again, I didn't bother asking why or what was the basis of any of this. She just made me do it and I would just do it.
Yeah.
And it's something I wish like I could pass on to my kids, but because they didn't give me a grounding with it, it's hard to pass it on without just doing the basic research myself and explaining it almost like a Westerner would analyze Eastern holidays. And something about it feels like I'm being a little fake about this because I wasn't explained this as a kid. So there's a lot of weird layers there.
I mean, I could see that concern, but I really feel like what you just explained was actually super educational for me because even though I know about Tet and as a Chinese American, we go around with our celebration. We go and bless different places and all of those things. But we go to the Tet festival, but normally we perform and then we have to rush off to another show. And so even just what you just shared about blessing each of the rooms and all of that, I mean, I think also each family has their own tradition. So I feel like you could totally make it your own, and not feel inauthentic. Like that was very traditional what you just shared. And do you, when you smell incense, does it take you back to that memory, to that time?
Yeah. Incense and then bowls of rice, uncooked rice with incense on the inside. Like anytime I see anything that looks like that, I'm just right back again, stealing grapes off the table and hoping my parents don't notice. And also, I don't know, did the Chinese do this and Koreans? Pussy willows? Like, do you guys put pussy willow sticks up? Because I think that's a Vietnamese thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that.
I don't know either.
Yeah, that was something I remember. My mother, she would only get large stalks of these beautiful pussy willows and put them in the vases next to the ancestors' pictures. And again, it was something where my little brother and I, we like to pick the pussy willows up because they look like teeny tiny hamsters. And we would call them our little pet hamsters and, allow ourselves 3 before my mother would yell at us.
Right. Because then it gets a little noticeable. I love this. I love this so much. And so Gene, like you mentioned food as well. What are some of your favorites or what are some that
I just remember noodles. I remember there were lots of noodles because it was connected with long life, right?
Long life, yes.
Like it's a way of wishing each other long life. So there was always noodles. I remember hot pot, which was really fun. It was almost like a game to cook hot pot, to see if you could get you could get your meat just right. And I also do remember the little candies too. There are these red envelope candies that I really loved. I don't know if you remember these. Remember these? It was like they're like kind of yellowish beige on the outside and pink on the inside. And I remember doing a presentation about Lunar New Year to my 4th grade class and handing them out,
Oh.
And some of the kids liked them and some of them did not. I remember looking in the trash can afterwards.
I've seen it.
A third of the kids had spit them out.
Oh my gosh. Well, some of it's
Oh,
acquired, right? Some of it's
Yeah,
acquired, but
maybe
I
it
think
was.
it's sharing. I think if you had given out the red envelopes, I'm pretty sure they would have kept those.
Oh, that's absolutely true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, instead of candy, yeah,
Yes, exactly. They're like,
money's
we
always
don't
a
want this
favorite.
candy. Let us buy our own. No, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's the fun part about these traditions is that we have our own and even though like there's kind of the international, okay, Lunar New Year, this is what normally quote unquote happens. I feel like all families kind of adapt their own traditions, whether it's having different foods, specific foods special to you, or you do adapt kind of the more traditional layers of things. But is there anything you do now, like with your families, now that you all have your own families and everything? Is there anything specific you do for Lunar New Year? Because I actually have a very untraditional, like, even though we're so traditional, we are working. Like you're supposed to be off on Lunar New Year and it's like
Oh,
our busiest time,
yeah.
right? So usually everyone's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we stay home, we eat all day, it's all this." And I'm like, "Oh gosh, for like the 3 weeks before to the month after, I've got shows lined up. We're just working nonstop. We're bringing joy
Yeah.
to everyone. We're doing all the lion dances." So it's kind of weird even though I'm so traditional in a way, it's very atypical because normally a family's home with their family and eating and we're just like
Yeah.
off performing. So it's interesting to me, like, what do people do now for Lunar New Year other than after we bless their store or their home? Like, what happens next? So, what do you do now, if anything?
oh, well, I think I like for my family, we've sort of adapted the like a new tradition. I think Lunar New Year or Tet lost its meaning once all of us grew older and we moved out of the house and we had our own families. So my mother kind of uses it as an excuse to bring everyone back home. So it's
Mhm.
Thanksgiving and then Christmas and then Lunar New Year. It's like
Ah.
her guaranteed trifecta of like visits from the whole entire family. So that's what we do, and she'll cook up a storm, and it won't just be food for Ted. It'll be like all of our favorite dishes, and my
Nice.
kids love egg rolls, and she makes these very special. Gene, someday I will share them with you.
Oh,
My
dude, I
mother's
can't
very
wait.
special egg rolls. They're amazing.
Yeah.
But that's I think that's it. She's learned what all the grandkids like to eat, and she's trying to pass it on in that way. But other than that, she does not put up a what is it, a little shrine anymore, which I find really interesting because I thought
Mhm.
with the grandkids coming, she definitely want to see that. So now I'm thinking of maybe doing it, like just
Yeah.
Mhm.
because it's because I remember it so clearly from my own childhood, and I kind of want them to have something like that. And they're so Western here because my husband's French. We've got all these French traditions that we pass on, but like that's one Vietnamese tradition I really kind of want to pass on, and I hope my
I love it.
kids are gonna
Oh my
have.
god.
Yeah.
Nice. How about you, Gene?
So I mean, my kids go to Chinese school, so they
Oh,
usually have a festival there, and they do all
yes.
sorts of the teachers will bring in all sorts of food. Usually we'll have like some kind of little party with the class. And then
Mhm.
I'm married to a Korean American, and with her family we do this very Korean thing where the kids will actually dress up in traditional Korean clothing, and then they'll have
Oh,
to bow. They have to do these bows, like these
Yes.
really like they're kind of choreographed,
Yes.
and my wife's family has taught our kids how to do this since they were like little toddlers, so they
I
all know how to
love
do
it.
it.
oh,
And then they bow to the grandparents, and then they bow to us, and then after they bow, we give them the red envelopes.
Mhm.
Although it seems like Koreans are not as strict about that. The envelopes
Mhm.
come in different colors. So we give
Yes,
them the
oh,
yes.
envelopes, and then in exchange for
sacrilegious.
the money, this is something that I didn't have when I was growing up, right? Like we would just get the money and that would be it. But with my wife's family, in exchange for the money, the kids have to sit there and listen to you give them advice. So that
Ah,
all the adults take turns giving them advice. Which
Oh my gosh.
wow.
I think is pretty fun. I actually think
That
it's
is
pretty fun.
fun. I
I mean, it's
love
fun for me.
that.
I don't know if it's fun for them. It's
It
fun
Paid
for
will
the
be
pleasure.
adults.
though. They'll look back and they'll say, "Oh, do you remember when so and so gave us this advice?" And I
Yeah,
think they'll look. Those are one of the things they'll look back on with fondness for sure. I don't like
yeah.
you said. Depends how long the advice goes on for.
Yeah, yeah. But they just have to sit there because we just give them money. We can go on for as long as we
That's
want.
right. That's right. Oh my gosh.
I suddenly realized we also do because along with Lunar New Year, there's the French tradition of the King's Cake, which is like in the
Ah,
Yes.
second week of January. So we kind of do a combined thing where the kids get their red envelopes and then they go under the table. I don't know if you guys know the tradition of the King's Cake and how it
uh-uh.
works. So it's a big almond paste cake. So it's a lovely like puff pastry with almond paste on the inside. And there's supposed to be a bean, or it's called a fiv. It's like a little symbolic porcelain something that's in the cake. And if you get that piece in as yours, you're the king for the day or the queen for the day. Because there's two crowns, and then you get to sort of bestow blessings on everybody after that. And so we would do that when we'd have the king's cake. The kids would get like their red envelopes, and then the youngest would get under the table and call out who gets which piece of cake, like who gets this piece of cake, who gets this piece of cake. So we kind of combine the two together in that way.
Oh,
So I think my
funny.
kids are going to think of those two holidays always enmeshed together
Yeah.
rather than Valentine's Day. Sorry.
That's okay. I love hearing about all of this tradition and us, how you create your own and you make it your own. And especially as we are in the melting pot of so many different cultures and seeing that intersectionality, I think it's fantastic. I always wondered about the king's cake. Like, has anyone ever, because you eat it, right? Or because I was always, does somebody choke on this thing that's in there? Or how does what happens? I always get worried. And I think the Mardi Gras has something similar too, where there's something hidden. And I'm always like, I don't know about hiding foreign objects in edible items, because I kind of get excited when I eat, and I was like, oh, I'd probably be the one to choke on it or something.
No, they're big pieces, but
they're all right. So now, talking about Lunar New Year love story, like, talk to me how this collaboration began, and of course, like, where did the idea come from? Because clearly we all have this fondness for Lunar New Year. You both have your own memories and your own traditions, and you've adapted it into this amazing book. And I'd love to hear kind of how that got started, and because I've got people at my school that are pretty excited because they're like, it's our story. We were lion dancers and we are now married, So I have people who are very excited about this, and that it's being told in this really, really fun way.
Well, Luen and I have been friends for a very long time, so we wanted to work with each other for a long time. I've been a fan of Luen's for a long time. I think she's one of the greatest children's book illustrators working in the industry today. I mean, I think you can make an argument that she's the greatest, but that we could do that.
Wow.
We could do that at a different time. Yeah. If you look at skill and innovation and speed, we can talk about this later. But I think you can make an argument that she's the greatest. Well, so I've been wanting to work with her for a long time. We've just talked on and off. And then in terms of this specific story, it actually finds its root in my relationship with my wife. So when Teresa, my wife, and I were dating, this is a long time ago. This is over 2 decades ago. She was not into Valentine's Day at all. She thought it was like this corporate scam. She thought it was just a way for big companies to sell you like candy, and like cards and stuff. But I really wanted to celebrate Valentine's Day with her because I was really into her, and my workaround was I would celebrate Lunar New Year with her, because those two holidays, even though they're on
always
two different
close by,
almost always near each other, and sometimes they're even on the same day. Every I don't know, like 10 or 15 years or something, they end up on the same day. So I would take her out for Lunar New Year dinner. I would like buy her Lunar New Year presents. I would give her Lunar New Year cards that I would draw with like the dragons shaped like hearts, and that was my workaround. So in my head, ever since I started dating her, those two holidays were kind of together. They were interwoven in a little way, I guess, like how King's Cake and Lunar New Year are interwoven with Luen's family.
Aww. There's a good wraparound there. I like that.
Yeah, you like that?
It's like he's an expert storyteller or something.
Yeah, I know,
it's
right?
Like he's a professional.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
basically. I love this because I was like, well, I know you're not a lion dancer, but I do know that there's a love story here that seemed very personal. So this makes so much sense that there's like a personal history to that. And I have to say, I resonate a little bit with your wife, where I'm like, oh, Valentine's Day. It's like everything's just marked up, 50% more for chocolate on that day. And so I'm a little bitter about it, but I love the looping of Lunar New Year. So did she ever catch on to the correlation that you were kind of it's my Valentine's Day?
Yeah, she humored me and she went along with it, and it worked because now we're married and we have 4 kids. Yes, it worked.
Success. Okay, so fast forward to now you're creating this story and you have this background and um how did the actual lion dance portion come in? Because of course that's what I'm super hyper excited about, that there's so much representation for the lion dance work ethic and just the lion dance in general. Like I love that you didn't like you looped it all together around different traditions. And like I said earlier, it's not just the lion, but there's like family and friendship dynamics and parents and kids dynamics. But how did the lion dance part come into play?
Yeah, I don't even know, Gene.
I think, yeah, I think it pushed its way in at some point. I mean, it took me a long time to break that story. I looked at I have a little folder marked Lunar New Year Love Story, and I looked at all the different drafts. I don't know, I have like maybe 12 or 15 drafts of just the outline, trying to figure out the story. And in the very first one, it actually had no lion dancing in it at all. It was two young people. Their names are not the same as their names in the final book. One was haunted by Saint Valentine's ghost, which stayed in the story, and the other was actually haunted by, I think they were haunted by all the animals that did not make it into the Eastern
The
Zodiac.
zodiac. Oh,
It just, yeah, and it just
Wow.
didn't, yeah, it didn't, it was like really different. It was really different. And then slowly I think there was a version where Val was a matchmaker. That was her thing, was that she could matchmake for other people, but then it would just never work out for her. None of that stuff worked until I think lion dancing got in there. I mean, it's so obvious because line dancing is such a big part of Lunar New Year. I don't know why it took me so long to go in that direction. It could have been because I knew nothing about line dancing, and I needed to talk to an expert
Wow.
about
I
it.
didn't know any of that. God, when this story came to me, it came pretty fully formed. And it was like, I had no idea you had all those other alternative versions of it. I would have loved to have seen that too.
They were just terrible. They were terrible, terrible versions. They were really terrible versions. Yeah.
But that is
Oh,
that part is that generally part of your process though, Gene? Like you draft, and then kind of
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
start
yeah.
with isn't
It has
necessarily what you
been.
end up
I
with,
feel like
right?
when I was younger, I would have stories that would just kind of come out like maybe 80% of the way there.
Oh,
But
wow.
that doesn't
Okay.
happen to me anymore. It's like it feels like every single time I feel like it's like a boxing match.
Ooh,
Like I'm trying to
yeah.
fight somebody to get the story to be right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you got, you said it was pretty fully formed. What were your thoughts on the project?
Well, like Jean said, I think we had always wanted to work together. And I honestly thought it was not going to come as a graphic novel. I thought it was going to come as a picture book that I would
Oh,
eventually get you
really?
to like to write a picture book. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, wouldn't that be cool if I got Jean to write a picture book and I illustrated it? Especially because like as much as I feel great about this graphic novel, like prior to this graphic novel, I had only worked with Shannon Hale ever for her memoir series on the Friends series, and that one felt like I was really cutting my teeth on how to make a graphic novel. I did two graphic novels with my husband prior to that, and I let Alex do all the heavy lifting, so I didn't have to worry about any of it. It was just kind of cruising on his back. So this to me felt like the first time I ever got to really like showcase what I'd learned, how like what I'd learned about making graphic novels over the years. But it's funny, I have been sent a lot of like scripts in the past, and I've been sent a lot of stories that sort of had Asian themes to them or Asian backgrounds. And usually there's stories that I find really moving, but that don't necessarily speak to me. And it's because I think I had such an odd raising with my family. Like we were immigrants, but we didn't have any family that was over here. Like our my entire introduction to Vietnamese culture was just in the pot of my family, which can be a bit dysfunctional. Understanding what that culture is. And so there's a lot about my own culture that I don't necessarily know, and that I have had to learn as I became an adult. And so I've been very hesitant to accept a lot of stories that revolve around Asian themes. And then Jane sends me this story, and I'm like, this is the first time I got a story that I completely understand. That the character just happens to be Asian, and Asian of like the type that I could completely get. Like I understood who the grandmother was, I understood who the dad was, I understood who the daughter was, because I was one of those characters. Like it was a story that was generated specifically for our age, our time, like who we are as Asians in this society. And I got completely behind that. And I always do tons of massive research of characters and development and all that for all of my projects. And this was one where it was like Gene just handed to me on a candy tray, like pick who you want in your life and fill in the blank. And it's like, yeah, man, I can completely and totally do this. And I think that was, for me, that was probably the most compelling part of doing this story, was that I felt for the first time absolutely being honest about the culture that I understood. And that was refreshing for me. Like, it was great to sort of be through Val's eyes and to admit, hey, I don't actually know that much about my own culture, you know, and to have my mother step in there and yell at me. Like, she's essentially yelling at me throughout the book because Jane's got this grandmother character that's yelling throughout the book. So there were just all these parts of the book that spoke to me very, very specifically. And I think it was why, even though I did not write this story, and this is totally Gene's brainchild here, like, it feels incredibly personal to me because so much of it just spoke to things that I understood and that I knew and that I still struggle to understand and that I still don't know. And I think for that reason, like, Val struggles through the stories and her own struggles with understanding what her family's background is. I just so inherently understood that. So on every level, the book was just really, really personal and, you know, filled with tons of Easter eggs that maybe no one else is going to notice, but everyone seems to notice the drunken master reference, which is great. But I think it's just really, really lovely to do a book that I'm so not afraid of expressing where I come from and who I am, because this is as close as I can get to explaining that to so many people.
Wow.
And well, Win is underselling her own involvement too, because she did do a lot of the writing. Like, there are whole scenes in the book that she wrote. They're just pieces of particularly relationships between women and between girls that I just don't think I got the voice right, you know, and between Val and her best friend Bernice, like Win's fingerprints are all over that, and there are whole scenes of those two friends talking that Win wrote.
Yeah.
So her Win's voice is definitely in there, and Win's life is in there too. Like,
Yes.
oftentimes
Her
we talk
blood,
about,
sweat, and tears.
yeah,
Right
we talked about Win's dates. We talked about our dating lives when we were in high school, you know,
Yeah.
and Win's was much more adventurous than mine. I only had one girlfriend before my wife, but some of the bad dates that Win told me about were so funny to me that we had to put them in the book.
Well, 'cause,
It's fun.
yeah, I was gonna ask because when I got the chance to read through, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so like teenage love story. Like, you'd feel and remember, like I said, there's so many notes of nostalgia, you know, not just the lion dancing stuff, which of course that was the part I was involved in, but like reading it just really brought you back to being a teenager, like the feelings you had, right? Just even the
Yeah.
feelings, like looking across the room and jealousy or, you know, envy and all these things that it just evokes a lot of nostalgia and memories, some good, some bad, but I can see how personal it was and how well the collaboration here worked and why, because the result of it is super evident in how much life was poured into it, like personal life. Now I'm learning really personal life from dating stories and everything and that family dynamic. But thank you for sharing all of that when that was super insightful to kind of to hear how much the main character especially resonated with you. Is there for you, Gene, like, is there a character that really resonates with you that you see yourself reflected in, I guess, in the book?
Ooh, I don't know. I do think that like when you're writing, sometimes you just end up putting a piece of yourself in all the characters, you
Yes,
know.
yes.
And Win and I have talked about this, how we did have to access our teenage selves to tell the story of the main characters.
Yeah.
But then age-wise, we're like a lot closer to the parents. I mean,
Right.
maybe even the grandparents for me. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, but at least emotionally, I think I did feel a kinship to Val's dad, because, you know, I have
Yeah.
3 daughters. My oldest daughter is about the same age as Val is in the book, which is very strange. It's very strange to like write these scenes where somebody your daughter's age is like kissing somebody. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I try
Yes.
not to think about it that way.
Yeah.
Uh, but the protectiveness of the dad, I think, I can feel. I feel when
Right.
I about my daughters.
Yes.
That's funny because for the mother, I think like Connie, the editor, and we like hammered Gene about this. Like, what about the mom? She's got a raw deal here. Like you're not acknowledging her. Something happened. And I think we insisted all the way until I think practically the book was finished, and we're like, Gene, you got to come up with something at the end to give the mother like a finish
Yeah,
to her
yeah.
story because and I just sympathize with the mother. Like, man, that must suck to be pregnant when you're so young, and then you got to like give it up, and then your husband won't let you have your kid. And all I could see was from the mother's perspective. And there's a scene in the book where they meet for the first time, and it was like for me, it was all about the emotion of the moment. Like, can you imagine if you saw your daughter after all that time and how overwhelming it could be? And it's like Vietnamese were all about tragedy and stories and love stories. And that's where it's like, I'm going to invoke all Vietnamese tragedy in this one particular scene. Just because it's such a like a moving moment. So
Yeah.
I think
And this is
definitely
the scene at the wedding, right?
this is the scene.
Yeah.
The big
Yeah, it
Yes.
turned out great.
I felt that.
Did
I
such a
felt
good
that.
job on it.
Now I realize where all of that was coming from. Is from when said all of her Vietnamese tragedy in this one scene. I felt it. So well done. Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Well, I have to say the character that resonated the most with me is the kung fu, is the Sifu.
I wonder why.
I really enjoyed kind of being able to answer questions about the lion in the way that you ask Wen, because I don't know that people have ever asked me in such a artist, like in a way, because you had to draw and you wanted to understand the mechanics so specifically, and you're like, I need to get under there and see all these things. And so it was really fascinating to have to kind of break down and explain specifics of things that I normally don't. Like even as a performer, like we get in and we do, and there's a traditional part, but I loved all of your questions. It really was, it was an interesting collaboration to kind of do it from that angle, because like you having to draw it had way different questions than someone having to do it. So I thought that was really fascinating for me, actually.
I did, Gene. I don't even think you knew about it, but like Mimi and I just kept having like back and forth where I would be doing like a lion dance scene, and I just kept thinking like, how do the mechanics of that even work? Like, because the pain, I mean, it's beautiful when you see the performance, right? Because everything flows. But when you're drawing, you still have to understand how the body fits underneath the costume in order to make the costume believable. And so I think that was all I kept asking, requesting for you. Just show me what they're standing like underneath the thing, and go through it slowly for me so I can see how they don't trip over each other's feet, and how that works, and how can the person with his head bent down, how can he even see what he's doing and where he's going? And it was just like I've got like, I don't know, 30 or 40 videos that she sent over of like her troops just doing these poses over and over again, because they kept saying, I need the pose. I'm sorry, like I'm just drawing the lion. This will never show up in the book, but I need the pose underneath because I need to know what it looks like. It was crazy.
Yeah.
That's
No,
amazing.
it was a lot of fun, especially when you're like, so how would somebody pretend to be scaring away a spirit without the lion, but as the lion? I'm like, actually, I got the right person for this. Like, she's ready to go, because she channels being a lion all the time. So when I sent you that video, I was like, hey, there's a scene in the book, guys. And then she was like, all right, got it. And it was really funny because I was like, that may have seemed like the weirdest request, but honestly, it was like one of the easier ones for us to do for you. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. It's good to know.
And I thought you would find that kind of amusing, because it was like, this is going to be weird. I'm like, no, it's not that weird. It's fine.
You were very like, I just loved how everything I sent over to you, you had no problem sending something back. I'm like, this is like getting a personalized encyclopedia about lion dancing, like without having to do all the research online for it, like you got just go straight to the source. It's pretty cool. So
oh no, thank you. It's all great timing, and the fact that I had stalked Gene down to be on my podcast a couple years ago now, and then we got to develop this lovely rapport, and been able to work on other small things with him too, where he's like, oh, when you hold a weapon, for example, how would you hold it for this character? And then so the fact that this came up, because he's like, do you do lion dancing? I'm like, oh, Yes, we do lion dancing, a lot of lion dancing.
Yeah, yeah.
So much
It was a
fun. No,
godsend, honestly. Yeah, yeah. You and your whole temple and your whole team were just such a
Yeah,
godsend.
I
Yes.
know. And it was
we were all
so
honored.
fun to it was so fun to learn about it too. Like I've
Yeah.
seen it my entire life, but like I
Right.
have a completely different appreciation of every single element of even just the costume. I think
Yeah.
you sent us to the Cypher Richard up in San
Yes,
Francisco,
yes,
so
yes.
I
A
was
friend of
able
mine.
to see it, and he was
Feel.
talking about like the blessings from head to tail, and
Yep.
I just so much stuff that you don't ever think about, and then you realize, wow, I have to make sure that I draw that horn just that way. Like everything became very, very specific, and someone who knows what they're doing would notice if the mirrors are missing on the side, you know, or if like the head is just like as we have in the book, like you can't put your hand through the mouth, and there's just
Yeah,
all
yeah,
these
yeah.
little rules that you don't think about when you're taking artistic liberties, and it's just like, oh, no, no, you have to be respectful of what's happening, so let's make sure. And yeah,
Yeah.
you were just great for checking all of that and
Oh,
making sure
thank you.
everything worked.
It was beyond my pleasure to work with both of you was like thrilling, absolutely thrilling. And it's kind of funny. I think was it last year this time like you actually sat in on one of our Lunar New Year prep practices where like
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah,
was
that's
getting
right.
ready and I'm
Over
like we're
Zoom.
kind of
Yeah.
yeah, we're kind of doing that now and I was like, "Oh yeah, guys, remember that graphic novel? Everyone go pre-order because it's coming out and we're there. This is going to happen. It's super exciting." Speaking of like the research aspect, because I know like this was highly, highly personal, but I know from speaking with Eugene and many of your other projects and all of the things, you're so intentional with how you tell the story and keeping things authentic and the questions you've always asked, even just me and the few things we've done. Like, were there specific rabbit holes that you did end up going down with researching this story, or because it came from a more personal perspective, was it a little easier and you didn't find yourself like diving down the deep end of like, research? Because I know you can kind of get very
Yeah, yeah,
involved in
yeah,
your
yeah. I
research.
definitely, yeah, I definitely did, and some of it was figuring out like the personal relationship side of being on a lion dance team. So there was you, and then one of my daughter's good friends is on a lion dance team. They sound like they're very like I'm not using this as a pejorative, but more of a term of endearment. They're very amateur, right? It's like a group of kids that are attached to a church, and they're like kind of looking at YouTube videos, and then they're
Yes.
doing it. You know what I mean? It's like that
Yeah.
kind of an operation. But I think the reason why my daughter's friend is part of it is because of the friendships that are involved in that.
Yes.
So there's her, and then one of my friends' daughters is at UCLA right now, and she just on a whim joined a lion dance team in LA, and I think they're probably in the middle between, my daughter's friend and you guys. So like they do have an instructor, but it doesn't sound as intense as your school. So, but in each of these settings, it seems like what matters is like the relationships that are involved. It's almost like the dance is a conduit for friendship, or
Yes.
a conduit for maybe even like a found family. So
Absolutely.
that's what I was really interested in. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a trust. I mean,
Yeah.
literally a trust, right? But you have to build these bonds and they're like a little family unit. And regardless of how quote unquote professional or if it's a hobby or if it's, we go to, we do Disney shows and things like that. Regardless, like the life of the lion and that whole um friendship dynamic, I think is phenomenal. Like that is the goal, right? That is the goal
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get a
yeah.
bunch of students or practitioners together and be working together towards something and enjoying it, right? And having a good time and building
Yeah.
love and all of these and having this friendship. But I do know that like you have that rabbit hole. And I just have to say, because you're like, well, not as intense. I'm like, that could also just be me. I'm very intense as a Sifu. So I can
Sure.
say like when you ask me to, hey, get me an image of you scolding your student. I'm like, no
Yeah.
problem. I got that.
Yeah.
That was pretty easy to get a capture of. I'm like, oh yeah, let me just get my security cam so you can see. It's like a daily
Yeah.
basis thing. But
Yeah.
and like when one of the things about the book that I didn't recognize till way later, like till recently, because it was always black and white sketches coming through and just like seeing all the fun notes between you and like seeing the kind of like a storyboard. But the color, I
Mhm.
mean, once I started to see the color, and then when you and I had a couple discussions towards the end, and you talked about how important that was on the page, and you went down the feng shui rabbit hole,
Uh-huh.
and then how there's different theories and different things and research. Can you talk to me about that rabbit hole you went down, or any other one you want? But I feel like you got pretty involved in looking at how you are going to play on the pages with color, and it is so gorgeous. And once people can see it, like, so intentional with the choices that you made and why, and I think it's just so beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much for that. You know what's really funny is color is the thing that I'm the weakest at, I will admit, when I do
What?
books.
Come
I know.
on. Come
No, I do.
on.
I really, really struggle with color. I don't struggle with painting. Painting is no problem, but color I struggle with, like getting it right and getting palettes right and stuff. And so in a weird way, finding the philosophy behind the art of the color in this book made the color part so much easier for me. And because of that, I don't have enough distance from it to look at to say like, I think the color is great. Like I can't tell. I just know what my intent was for it and whether or not it worked for the story. So for all of that, I know like Gene and I, we had all these discussions about like we talked about bagua. Remember
Aqua.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
the bars for the longest afternoon because I was trying to find ways to integrate Eastern philosophy into Uncle Yun Sing's the character who's the artist in the book. He's making all these metal works. I wanted to base them all on East meets West philosophies. I don't even think I showed you this, Gene, but I made like 3 pages of artwork that Uncle Yun Sang made out of
Oh,
metal.
dude.
Yeah, and I just because I had to design all the stuff that was just
Yeah.
going to lie in the background, and I couldn't just make stupid looking stuff. Like it would have been fake. So I spent all this time designing it. And then my brother-in-law is a Japanese guy who does metal work for himself, just for himself. And he's got a garage where he's, he like puts all this metal work together. So I got to go and visit him and I took all these pictures and I was having all these discussions, the
Wow.
same discussions I had with you about like the bagua, about feng shui, about the wheel, about yin yang. And I just took a ton of pictures of him in his whole studio space and I used some of his art. But if you look, like someday I will show you, if you look, you can see all the statues have all these like Eastern philosophies behind it. And there is, and so for when it came down to creating color for the book, I went to the feng shui wheel because if you look, each of the colors on the feng shui wheel, they have a different meaning. Like there's chapter 2 are the colors brown and green are the predominant colors. Those are not colors that I would naturally go to in coloring a graphic novel, right? Like they're sort of dull, sort of forest-like colors, and they're not much for popping off the page. But those were the colors that represented family and descendants. And it was perfect for the chapter because it's where she
Yeah.
sees her grandmother and her grandmother explains to her that her whole family's been whatever. And so each of the chapters just found significance in some color on the feng shui wheel. And it was for me, just the easiest way to solve the color issue and use those Eastern philosophies as much as possible into them. There's only one problem with the feng shui wheel. It's like there's 3 that are silver and white and silver and white and silver, white and gold. And I'm like, wait, those aren't 3 different colors. Those are like 3 of the same. And I didn't quite know how to divide those up. But and then of course I think there are 4 chapters that have the color red as the dominant theme. And red, again, it's the intersection of like the Eastern and Western philosophy. So you've got red of the Lunar New Year, of fire, of passion, of luck for the Asian culture, and then it's red for love on the Western
Yeah.
culture. And it just they come in. I use the color red at the moments where she moves forward and her thinking of what love is, and love in relation to her family, love in relation to the opposite sex, love in relation to herself. Like each of those chapters are signified by that particular color pushing you forward. So there's a lot of thought pre-planned into all of this. But once it just came down to coloring, it was just, okay, I don't have to think anymore. Those are the colors I'm going to pick. I'm going to go for it. Let's try to make it look as good as possible. And yeah, that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it really is. And that's another argument why Luen is in the conversation for greatest of all time. Yeah.
There you
Yeah,
go.
all that.
We're
Like
just
there's
building a
I
case,
feel like
basically.
with her art, it's sort of like we talk about this in writing, right? You when you're world building or anything, you're building this iceberg, and like 80% or 90% of the iceberg, the reader doesn't see. They only see the tip, but the tip doesn't seem right unless you have all the stuff that's underneath. And I think Win did the same with the color. Like most people who read it are not going to know anything about
No.
China, but it doesn't matter because you still feel it. You know, you still
Yes.
understand it. Your subconscious picks up on it, even if you are consciously not aware of it.
Yeah, no,
You know,
absolutely.
but even in all that, I mean, like Gene keeps on putting on lauding all this stuff on me, but I'm gonna say, like, it was in the script. I remember the sequence where where Uncle Yunsang is teaching the two cousins how to do the lion dance, and he's explaining about the sun and this what it was the sun and the wind, no, the water, sun and water. um and um and and then there's a whole page where he's got all of the animals of the horoscope in there, and then I think, I don't remember if you put it in there or did I put it in there after we talked about it, but the Bagua symbols are on that page too. Did you have that in there initially?
Oh yeah. It's
I think
because
you
the
did.
lion. It was hard to find the lion in Eastern philosophy, right? Because the lions are native to. So I guess this is a rabbit hole that I fell into. My understanding is that lions are native to Africa, and the lion dance probably came from like two lions being sent to, I think, one of the Chinese emperors as a gift, you know? And then those two lions died, and then there's a memory of what they were like, right? And that's sort of what one lion dance grew out of. And that's why the lion of the lion dance doesn't totally look like an actual lion. It's its own thing. So it was hard to find the lion in Eastern culture, and then I found it in a version of the. You're gonna know what this is, Mimi. Bagua Zhang. Am I pronouncing that right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
Aquazang.
the martial art that you do around
Mm-hmm.
Bagua,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's a version of that has a different animal associated with each trigram. And the lion is one of them. The lion is one of them, and the lion is actually associated with the one that's three. It's the three yang trigrams. You know,
Okay.
so it's an all yang. It's like an all
Very
yang
yang.
animal, very yang
Yes.
animal,
Very
right?
yang
Very
animal.
direct. And when I saw that, I was like, that's what Asian American guys need. You know what I mean? Like I think Asian American guys in general are often encouraged to be passive or to be quiet or to be sidekicks.
Mm.
But we need to go all yang sometimes.
Try yang.
Yes,
Maybe
yeah,
try.
that's right. That's right. You need all three trigrams. Yeah,
All the
yeah.
three
You need the
tri.
whole
Yeah, we need
trigram to be
the
all
whole
yang. Yeah,
trigram to be all yang, and the
yeah,
lion should be your spirit animal.
yeah. That's right. That's right.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I know we're kind of running out a little bit of time here, but you both are teachers, and I know you've taught art, you've taught about comics in education, and you both come from like kind of a teaching background as well, which I find fascinating and also so important. So as teachers, like I see this book, and so much of it is very personal, of course, because I see, representation. I see not just Asian American representation. I see the martial arts side of things. I see the culture that you're bringing out Lunar New Year in such a, forward way. And it's such an important thing. And I know that you have been teaching a long time, and we're in a place now, I think, in society where we're finally more open, right, to POC stories. We're more open to cultural stories. But like I know, of course, Gene had American born Chinese so many years ago, and it was such a hard thing to kind of get into the mainstream. But you see this book, and I don't look at it as a book for like Asian Americans. I just look at it as a book for young adults, for adults, even not even just young adults, and just like a book for everyone. And so as teachers, like, how do you feel it will be received by the youth and kind of like the mainstream public, and where do you see its kind of place in terms of educating the public as well?
The youths. I like
The
that.
youths.
Gene, you tackle that first. I got to think about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I would say with all of the projects I've worked on, my hope is the most basic hope is that it is interesting enough to carry the reader from the first page to the last, right? That's like the foundational goal. Like if you can get that, you've as a storyteller, you've won in some way. Beyond that, I mean, my hope is that like it'll be the education about Asian and Asian American culture will be secondary. Like it'll almost like seep into you without you really noticing it. You know,
Mhm.
I think that would be great. And I also like I also hope that I think nowadays there is a lot of fear, especially when it comes to love and romance. You know, I my wife and I teach Sunday school at our church, so we hang out with like these eighth graders a lot, and there's a certain nervousness that is just part of being an eighth grader that has been there in the 80s when I was an eighth grader, and is still there today. But I do think there's an extra added layer of fear now that maybe wasn't there when we were young. Maybe some of that comes from social media and from technology and the ways in which technology has changed human relationships, you know. And my hope is that like one of the messages that I hope the book gets across is that there's lots of risk when it comes to love, but love is still worth the risk, you know? It's still worth the risk.
Oh, I love that.
So romantic.
I know, I know. I learned from this is not just an amazing storyteller and writer, but such a romantic. Yeah, I love it.
I
From the
want someone
Lunar
to
New
tell my wife.
Year,
Can someone tell my wife?
from the Lunar New Year, Valentine's Day gestures to yes. Oh my gosh, love that. Um,
Oh wow. I don't
yeah.
know how to follow that.
Oh, and your
You know,
own.
I'm not sure that I had any intentions in this story. Like I didn't necessarily see it as a teaching opportunity,
Yeah.
although I think it becomes that when you sort of offer up a slice of how you perceive life to be and your sort of interpretation of what love means and what it means to be a teenager and what it means to be a parent of a teenager and what it means to be a grandparent of a teenager of a certain era, of a certain background. Like the fact that they're Asian, I think we mentioned earlier, is incidental, and it adds a lot of depth to what's the simple love story, right? Because it infuses meaning in the smallest of things. And you see the grandmother and she's got a jade bracelet, and it's not going to mean anything to anyone but a Vietnamese person that's going to know, oh my God, she came from Vietnam at this time, because every Vietnamese woman wears a jade bracelet. You know, there's just everything is infused with stuff. And whether it was meant to be a teaching opportunity, I think it's lovely that it can become a teaching opportunity, but it is absolutely secondary to, I think, what the story is meant to be. Like, I think I loved designing so many Asian characters, because I can't stand how often you see the same Asian character drawn over and over and over again to represent an Asian character.
Yeah.
And I like took it unto myself as, how many different characters can I design that they'll all look different and be Asian, and no one's going to question it, and no one's going to think, oh, they're all basically one group Asian. Like, you'll see in their face and in their eyes and in their shapes. And it was just, to me, like a big drive forward to design as much as possible, especially because don't have Asian eyes, and I have suffered my entire life in both directions for not having Asian eyes. And so I have been like an acute observer of eye shapes my entire life because of that. And I love that I had a place to put all of that finally, like to come up with a wide diversity of eye shapes, just so we can all say, all Asians do not look the same. Let's get that absolutely clear. So
Yeah.
there's elements throughout the books that, for me, I don't know, I find so personal that I don't think until the end of this tour I'm going to understand what all these reviews mean when people tell us they really love the book. I don't think I get it yet, and I won't get it until I hear what other people have to say about it, and how our experience is actually affecting how people read the story and what it is they're taking away from it. And I'm most curious to know, like, what a non-Asian person would do. Like, my son's friends all got to read this book, and he's only got a couple Asian friends, and their reaction to it was the same as to any sort of novel they'd read. And there was no oh, it's an Asian story. Like there's not that moniker associated with it, which I love. I love that it's just simply a love story, and that our generation is calling it an Asian love story with pride, right? But their generation just sees it as a love story, a good love story, and that to me is like it's a story that I think couldn't have been told 20 years ago without the forced lesson of this is about Asian people. Now it's just a story and it happens to be about Asian people. And yeah, it's a product of this particular time that a story like this could be told, I think. So, and then I would do it with you.
Well, amazing. Congratulations on Lunar New Year Love Story. And again, thank you both for involving me in the collaboration and, in even the slightest way. And I was so proud to be a part of this project. Like,
wait, it has to be said, does everybody realize that the sifu in the book is Sifu Mimi? Like, we all know that, right? Sifu Mimi is the Sifu in the book.
And it's because she was the consultant. She was the source of lion dance knowledge for us. Yeah, all the way through.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was great.
Yes, thank you for saying yes. Thank you for saying yes.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking. Oh my goodness. Yeah. When you said, oh, do you mind if I kind of base the Sifu off of you? I was like, no, not at all. It would be an honor. Oh my gosh. To be in one of Gene's books. Are you kidding? But I will say my students, whether they think it's me or not, when they get to the page where the Sifu's reprimanding the students, they're going to go, oh yeah, that's Sifu Mimi. You got that one down. You got that one down. No, it was such an honor. And like you've both shared, it is a story about family and love and falling in love and just kind of reliving those moments in your teenage years and all of it wrapped up with fun Lunar New Year traditions. And I am so excited to share it with the world. And it's such a privilege to be a part of, but congratulations on this amazing story and beautiful book. And I can't wait for everybody to read it. So everyone, it comes out on January 9, correct? Yes. So everyone can pre-order that. You can pre-order the book so you can have it in your hands and be ready to go. I know there is a massive book tour, which I'm going to somehow get you guys to come to Orlando so we can be something at the temple. But
yeah, I would love to come to Orlando. I'd love to come to Orlando to see your team perform in person and to visit.
We will do a show just for you all. Like we will do a special lion dance show for you. I tell you, if you come to the temple. So we are going to make something happen. But please check out the website. You can see their social media. I'll link everything here and you can kind of go and follow them on their book tour as well. So you can hear all of these stories live and maybe get some of those dating stories out of them that we didn't have time for. But next episode, I'm going to say, okay, I didn't want to embarrass anybody, but it's so much fun, and getting to know you both even better through this process has been such an honor. So thank you so much. Thanks for being on the podcast, and everybody go out and get Lunar New Year Love Story.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mimi.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.